In the heart of West Africa, where history is written in the dust of revolution, one man's courage and vision sparked a fire that could not be extinguished. Ibrahim Traoré, a soldier who rose from the shadows of Burkina Faso's military ranks to become the face of change, proved that even in the darkest times, one individual can shift the course of a nation. But what drove him? What did it take to lead a country to freedom? Stay tuned as we uncover the untold story of the captain of the revolution, one that will inspire, challenge, and change the way you view leadership. Ibrahim Traoré was born in the heart of Burkina Faso, a land that had known both peace and conflict, yet always held the resilience of its people. From a young age, he was surrounded by stories of struggle, of liberation, and of a nation longing for a future free from oppression. The son of a family deeply rooted in the traditions of their homeland, Traoré was raised with an unwavering sense of duty toward his country. Growing up in a time when Burkina Faso was still reeling from its colonial past and the waves of political instability that followed, Ibrahim was keenly aware of the world around him. The nation, once known as Upper Volta, had undergone significant changes, most notably the rise of Thomas Sankara, a revolutionary leader who sought to transform the country into a symbol of hope for Africa. But after Sankara's tragic assassination, the people of Burkina Faso found themselves once again caught in a cycle of uncertainty and disillusionment. As a teenager, Traoré was drawn to the military. For him, it was not just a career, but a calling. He believed that through discipline, structure, and unity, he could contribute to the greater good of his nation. The military academy became his crucible, a place where his resolve would be tested and his character forged. It was here that Ibrahim took the oath of a soldier, a commitment to serve his people, to protect his country, and to carry the weight of its struggles on his shoulders. Though young, he was driven by a clear understanding. The path to true change would not be easy, but it was necessary. He would rise through the ranks, not out of ambition for power, but for a purpose greater than himself, to bring stability to a nation torn by internal strife. The army became his second home, a place where he would witness first-hand the tensions that were festered within the political and military elite. Corruption, power struggles, and betrayal seemed to be woven into the fabric of Burkina Faso's leadership. Yet, Traoré remained focused on his duty, knowing that someday the time would come for him to stand up, not just as a soldier, but as a leader for the people. This was the beginning of Ibrahim Traoré's journey, one that would lead him from the barracks of the military to the very heart of Burkina Faso's revolutionary future. And though the world around him seemed uncertain, one thing was clear. His destiny was about to be shaped by forces far beyond his control. In the years that followed his oath, Ibrahim Traoré's journey through the military ranks was marked by both challenges and triumphs. While many of his peers were content to rise slowly through the chain of command, Traoré's ambitions were driven by something deeper, a desire to serve not just as a soldier, but as a force for change. He understood that real leadership required more than just skill with weapons or strategy. It required a vision for the future, a commitment to the people, and the moral fortitude to stand by those values, even when faced with immense pressure. His time in the military brought him face to face with both the triumphs and flaws of Burkina Faso's system. The country was caught in a cycle of political instability, and the military, once a symbol of strength, was now embroiled in corruption and internal conflict. As he rose through the ranks, Traoré saw firsthand the growing disconnect between the people and the leaders in power. The elite had grown comfortable, disconnected from the realities of everyday Burkinabe life. Corruption and cronyism ran rampant, leaving the military as a tool to serve the interests of few, rather than the collective good of the nation. For Traoré, this was unacceptable. His idealism, fueled by the memory of Thomas Sankara's revolutionary ideals, was the fire that drove him. But as he advanced in rank, he realized that the fight for justice was not a simple one. It was not just about speaking out against injustices within the military, but also about navigating a system that was unwilling to change. In this environment, Traoré's leadership potential was not only tested, but refined. He earned the respect of his comrades through his discipline, his integrity, and his unwavering commitment to his country. His reputation as a man of principles began to spread within the military circles, and soon he found himself in positions where he could influence others. But it was never about power for Traoré. It was about responsibility. Every promotion he received was viewed not as a step toward personal glory, but as a greater opportunity to effect change. His dedication and moral compass also drew the attention of key figures within the military, some of whom recognized the rare qualities that set him apart from others. Yet, with each new responsibility came deeper entanglement in the complex political struggles that plagued the nation. The divisions within the ranks were palpable, and Traoré learned to navigate these treacherous waters, keeping his focus on his vision for a better Burkina Faso. He was always aware that, in a system like this, trust was fragile, and loyalty was a commodity that could be bought or betrayed. But as the years passed, the cracks within the political landscape of Burkina Faso began to widen, and the people's disillusionment grew. The calls for change grew louder. Ibrahim Traoré, now a seasoned officer, could no longer ignore the signs. Burkina Faso was on the brink, and his time to lead was drawing near. By the time he had reached the rank of captain, it was clear to Traoré that his role in the military was more than just a career. It was a preparation for something greater. The nation's struggles would soon demand a leader who understood both the battlefield and the battleground of politics. And Traoré was ready to answer the call of duty, not just as a soldier, but as the leader Burkina Faso so desperately needed. By the time Ibrahim Traoré had risen to the rank of captain, Burkina Faso was a nation on the edge of collapse. The dream of a united and self-sufficient Burkina Faso, first ignited by the revolutionary vision of Thomas Sankara, had slowly dimmed. The assassination of Sankara had left a gaping wound in the heart of the nation. Successive governments had failed to heal that wound, and in their place, corruption, mismanagement, and political instability had taken root. The people were growing restless. Protests had become more frequent, and calls for revolution were no longer a whisper. They were a roar. In the military, things were no better. Power struggles between different factions had led to an environment of mistrust and division. Traoré, while respected by his peers, began to recognize the deeper fractures within the military and the country at large. The leadership was divided, with some generals and officers loyal to the old regime, while others were calling for reform. This internal conflict was undermining the military's ability to maintain order, and the political elite, entrenched in their own interests, had little concern for the suffering of the people. Traoré, however, could not stand idly by. He had seen the toll that corruption and mismanagement had taken on the country. Poverty, hunger, and insecurity were widespread, and the once vibrant promise of Sankara's vision had been replaced by a harsh reality. The people were demanding change, but the ruling class was too disconnected to hear their cries. It was during this time of deepening crisis that Traoré's thoughts began to shift from being just a soldier to becoming a catalyst for change. He was haunted by the memory of Sankara's words that had been all but forgotten the years since his death. The revolution is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process. For Traoré, this was no longer a distant ideal. It was a call to action. He began to see the military not just as an institution of order, but as a force that could unite the people. The military, after all, was supposed to be a reflection of the nation, and its purpose was to serve and protect the people. But under the current leadership, it had become another tool of oppression. This realization became the driving force behind his decision to take a stand. Yet, it was not an easy choice. Traoré knew that making a move would not only risk his career, but his life. The political and military elite were well entrenched, and the possibility of failure loomed large. But the crisis had reached a point where inaction would mean the complete destruction of the nation. Traoré, deeply aware of the gravity of the situation, understood that the time for change had come, and he could not wait for others to act. The tipping point came when a group of disillusioned officers approached him. They had witnessed the same failures he had, and they believed that the only way forward was to reclaim the revolution. It was a small group, but one with great conviction. Together, they began to form the nucleus of what would eventually become a powerful movement for change. For Traoré, this moment was a crucial turning point. The people were ready. The military was ready. But the nation needed a leader who could unite the forces of change. He had spent years watching the crisis unfold, but now it was his turn to lead it. The political and military system was crumbling, and the vacuum of leadership had created an opening. Ibrahim Traoré, once a captain, now stood at the precipice of history. The stage was set for a revolution, and Traoré was ready to answer the call. The struggle for change had begun, and it would not stop until Burkina Faso was free from the chains that had bound it for far too long. The moment Ibrahim Traoré had long anticipated had arrived. The political instability and military divisions within Burkina Faso had reached a boiling point, with the nation's future hanging in the balance. The opportunity for radical change presented itself, and Traoré was ready to seize it. It began with a well-coordinated, daring move. Traoré, having already built a network of trusted allies within the military, knew that action had to be swift and decisive. He understood that hesitation would cost him precious time, and in such a volatile environment, time was the enemy. In the dead of night, he and his loyalists took control of key military positions, securing vital infrastructure and communications. They moved with precision, knowing that their success depended on their ability to move quickly and decisively. The government, already weakened by internal conflict and widespread discontent, was caught off guard. President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who had been in power for nearly a decade, was seen by many as incapable of addressing the growing crises facing the nation. Corruption scandals had further tarnished his reputation, and the military's failure to curb the rising terrorist insurgencies had left the country vulnerable. The people had lost faith in his leadership, and the momentum for change had reached a tipping point. By the early hours of the morning, Traoré's forces had successfully taken control of the presidential palace and other key government buildings. There was no violence, no bloodshed, just a bold, peaceful assertion of power. The message was clear. The people of Burkina Faso were ready for a new direction. Traoré, now at the helm of the revolution, addressed the nation with a message of unity and hope. He spoke not only as a military leader, but as a servant of the people. "This is not a coup for personal gain," he declared. "This is a revolution to restore the values of justice, equality, and freedom to our nation. It is time for Burkina Faso to rise from the ashes of corruption and division and build a future worthy of the sacrifices made by our ancestors." His words resonated with the people. The streets, once filled with protest and despair, were now filled with hope. The dawn of a new era had begun. For many, it felt as though the long-awaited promise of a revolution, one that would return Burkina Faso to the ideals of Thomas Sankara, was finally within reach. In the aftermath of the takeover, Ibrahim Traoré moved swiftly to consolidate power and ensure the stability of his new government. He sought to dismantle the structures of corruption that had plagued the previous regime, removing individuals who had benefited from the country's suffering. His focus was clear: to restore the integrity of the military, reinstate the rule of law, and prioritize the welfare of the people above all else. But Traoré knew that the path ahead would not be easy. His actions had made him a target for those who sought to maintain the status quo. The international community, too, would be watching closely, as Burkina Faso's future would hinge on its ability to navigate both internal challenges and external pressures. Yet, for the first time in years, there was a sense of unity in the air, a shared belief that, with Traoré at the helm, Burkina Faso could once again become a beacon of hope for Africa. The revolution had begun, and Ibrahim Traoré stood as its captain, the symbol of the people's will. But as the country's new leader, he understood that true change required more than just seizing power. It required vision, sacrifice, and commitment to the long and arduous journey ahead. With his military background and revolutionary spirit, Traoré was ready to lead Burkina Faso into a new dawn, where justice, peace, and prosperity would no longer be distant dreams, but a tangible reality. The dust had barely settled after the revolution, when Ibrahim Traoré found himself not just leading a country, but carrying the weight of its future. The fall of the old regime was only the first step in what would be a long and challenging journey to rebuild Burkina Faso. For the first time in decades, the people of Burkina Faso were filled with hope that a new leader, untainted by the corruption of the past, would restore the ideals that once made their nation proud. But Traoré knew that the true test was just beginning. The military takeover, though swift and largely bloodless, had left deep scars. The nation was in turmoil, suffering from economic instability, a fractured social fabric, and the growing threat of insurgent groups destabilizing the north and east. While the streets were filled with jubilant supporters celebrating the fall of the old regime, Traoré remained focused on the daunting task ahead: how to restore peace, rebuild trust, and create a government that would serve the people. One of Traore's first actions was to establish a transitional government. He sought to include a wide range of voices, both from the military and from civil society, to ensure that all sectors of the population had a stake in the country's future. The aim was not just to end the power struggles that plagued the old regime, but to create a more inclusive system, one in which the government would be answerable to the people, not to the elite. Traore also made a conscious effort to reconnect with the ideals of Thomas Sankara, the leader who had inspired so many with his vision for a more self-sufficient, egalitarian Burkina Faso. He revived policies that focused on local development, education, and self-reliance, which had been central to Sankara's vision. Land reforms were implemented to empower farmers, and efforts to fight corruption were intensified, signaling that the new government would not tolerate the same abuses of power that had characterized the past. But the path was far from smooth. Traore faced immense resistance from those who had benefited from the previous regime, including military officers, businessmen, and political elites. Some of them quietly opposed the new government, while others tried to rally support for counter-revolutionary movements. The terrorist groups in the north, capitalizing on the country's instability, continued to press their attacks, threatening not only national security, but also the fragile unity that Traore had worked so hard to foster. Despite these challenges, Traore remained resolute. His leadership was marked by a firm but compassionate approach. He prioritized national unity above all else. He urged the people to come together, transcending tribal divisions and historical grievances. "We are one nation, one people," he would often say. The future of Burkina Faso depends on our ability to stand united, to face our challenges together, and to rebuild what has been broken. In time, the country began to stabilize. The economy slowly recovered, with reforms that encouraged agricultural development and increased trade with neighboring countries. Education systems were revitalized, and healthcare initiatives reached even the most remote parts of the country. The people, once disillusioned by years of corruption and neglect, began to see the fruits of the revolution in their everyday lives. But Traore knew that lasting change was not just about economic recovery or political stability. It was about ensuring that the legacy of the revolution lived on in the hearts and minds of people. He focused on fostering a culture of civic responsibility and democratic engagement, encouraging young people to take part in shaping the nation's future. His leadership was not just about wielding power, but about empowering the people themselves to take charge of their destiny. As the years passed, Traore's legacy as the captain of the revolution began to take shape, not as a military ruler, but as a symbol of the people's will to reclaim their future. His leadership proved that change was possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. He had not only restored Burkina Faso's independence from external forces, but had given it back to its people. In doing so, he ensured that the revolution would not be a fleeting moment in history, but a permanent transformation that would continue to shape the country for generations to come. Though challenges remained, Ibrahim Traore stood as a beacon of hope and resilience. His journey, from soldier to revolutionary leader, was a testament to the power of conviction, unity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. In the end, his greatest achievement was not just in overthrowing a corrupt regime, but in creating a Burkina Faso that belonged to its people, one that would, in the years to come, continue to rise stronger than before. The story of Ibrahim Traore is not just a tale of a soldier turned revolutionary. It is the story of a people reclaiming their destiny. From the humble streets of Bondakwi to the corridors of power in Ouagadougou, Traore's journey reminds us that true leadership is born from service, sacrifice, and an unbreakable bond with the people. But the revolution he ignited is not over. It lives on in the everyday struggles of Burkinabe citizens striving for a better future, and in the hearts of all those who believe in justice, dignity, and freedom across Africa and beyond. If you found inspiration in this story of courage and transformation, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of African leaders who dare to change the course of history. The revolution is never finished. It continues with you